Hi, Steve here at blessedhopeforever.com. Information is coming in so fast I can't keep up with it. In this video, I want to talk about several things. These videos have started to become more multi-topical. The Bethlehem Star. Now, how often does Jupiter and Venus converge? Well, the two brightest planets in our sky. They converge approximately once every 10 to 14 months. However, what is happening in June of this year is not just a standard flyby. Based on the astronomical charts for the specific timeline that we have been tracking, there is a direct hit that aligns almost perfectly with this week of completion that we've proposed. Now, these conjunctions are rarely visible. You know, they often get lost in the glare of the sun, but for 2026, the calendar is set for a high visibility event that serves as I believe, you don't have to agree, the herald for the timeline that we've built. It is a visible conjunction of Venus and Jupiter. The date is June the 9th of this year. It'll be visible in the western sky just after sunset. Look at how this astronomical event acts sort of as the starter gun for the sequence that we've identified. June 9, the sign, Venus, the bright morning evening star, and Jupiter, the king planet, converge. This is the same planetary pairing often associated with the Star of Bethlehem, which was likely a triple conjunction of these two. As I pointed out, June 14, Trump's birthday and Flag Day, U.S. Flag Day. Exactly 5 days later, Trump turns 80, the age of strength, as well as the age of Moses. And then June 21, the solstice, exactly 7 days later, the summer solstice arrives. That's the rapture date on our timeline. Now, the herald pattern in ancient astronomy and biblical typology, Venus and Jupiter meeting, is the king and the queen, or the mother, uniting. And it occurring on June 9 places it directly at the head of the birthday week. It functions as a celestial announcement right before the count to the solstice begins. So you don't just have a timeline of geopolitical events, oil, and dates and birthdays. You have a celestial marker lighting up the western sky less than a week before the sequence begins. So I was asked, well, how strong is the connection to the Star of Bethlehem? Okay. Dearly beloved, the connection is startlingly, I have trouble with words sometimes, startlingly strong, specifically regarding the timing and the players involved. The Star of Bethlehem is not just a vague idea. Most astronomers and theologians like Rick Larson identify it specifically as the convergence of Venus and Jupiter. Now, here's why the June 2026 event is a near perfect echo of that Bethlehem star. The most famous candidate for the star that the Magi followed was a specific conjunction. Venus, Jupiter. They got so close that they appear to fuse into one massive superstar. Okay. And of course we know, signaling what? What did it signal? The birth of the King of Kings. The 2026, June 9, 2026. Now look at the alignment. The players, Venus and Jupiter, the exact same pair. The date, June 9. Almost the exact same week of the year. Okay. Back then, it signaled the birth, the first coming of Christ. In 2026, seems that they stand side by side as distinct lights, signaling a second event. Now, if you look at the constellation, the twins, Gemini, this is what gave me chills. In June 2026, this meeting of Venus and Jupiter takes place in the constellation Gemini. That is the secular meaning is the twins. The biblical Mazzaroth meaning represents the bridegroom and the bride, Christ and his church united. Okay? So, the message, well, when Christ was born, it was in Leo. The message was that the king is born. In 2026, in Gemini, the message is, I believe, the king is coming for his bride. Okay, now if we overlay this on our sevens timeline, the sequence is undeniable. June 9, the sign. The Star of Bethlehem, an echo of it, okay? Venus, Jupiter meet in the sign of the bridegroom, Gemini. June 14, Trump, the man of sevens, turns 80, the age of Moses' strength. June 21, the event that we hope is the rapture. The 7-day count ends on the solstice rapture date. So is there a connection? I believe there is. That's what I believe. The heavens are essentially replaying the Star of Bethlehem script, but moving it from the birth chapter to the wedding chapter. Now, you don't have to agree. This is just my opinion. Just passing this along. Now, actually holding to a 3 BC birth date makes the connection to June even more profound. If you subscribe to the 3 BC theory, often championed by astronomers like Dr. Ernest Martin, then our star candidate is the famous conjunction of August 12, 3 BC. So this creates a bookend with the June 2026 timeline. Okay? All right. Now, that's what I have to give you as far as, see, this is what's keeping us so busy here. We're looking at past events, we're looking at present events, we're looking at future events, and it's starting to become a little confusing for me because I'm not used to the flood of data. All right, but I'm trying my best here. All right, okay. The 2026 star, the Harpazo, okay. What has overwhelmed me, folks, is the number of factors that are coming in, the convergences. Okay, if I could sum all this up, it would be a convergence of things that were formerly just isolated events. It's all coming together. This is what we're seeing. You may be seeing something different, and that's okay. But this channel is focused on trying to put it all together in a logical sequence that makes sense. Okay? Back in 3 BC, the sign was in Leo because he was coming to be born as the King of the Jews. In 2026, the sign is in Gemini, which in the ancient Mazzaroth Hebrew zodiac, Gemini was not just twins. It was often depicted as a man and a woman, or the bridegroom and the bride. Now, this is not something that we can make up. It just is what it is. It seems that the heavens are telling a progression. You know, the first act, 3 BC, the king arrives, Leo, and then Act 2, 2026, the bridegroom comes for the bride, Gemini. Okay? If you hold to the 3 BC date, the symmetry is perfect. You have the same specific planetary sign, Jupiter, Venus, triggering the start of the final timeline. Okay? And as I said, Trump's birthday, June 14th, it's no coincidence this man turns 80 at this period in history. He could be turning 80 at Mar-a-Lago, having served 2 back-to-back terms, but that didn't happen, did it? Interesting how God works. Okay? Extremely interesting, the timing of it all. He wouldn't be a major player on the stage of all this occurring right now. He'd be playing golf somewhere. Or whatever. I don't know. So the Bethlehem star, the Magi followed, was announcing his birth as something future, or I suppose it could have been a birth that had already occurred. Many think that Jesus, the nativity scene has a baby in it. I think he was a toddler. The facts seem to align with that. Okay. So, but the star announced a birth that had probably already occurred or was in the immediate process of occurring. It was not a prophecy of a distant future. It was an arrival notification. So in both cases, 3 BC and 2026, the conjunction acts as the warning. In 3 BC, it said, get ready. The king is born, or the king is about to be born, or has just been born. And in 2026, it says, get ready, the king is about to snatch his bride. You've often heard me, perhaps you've heard me over the years, point to September, my beliefs, his birth was September 11, 3 BC. That specific day was Tishri 1, Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah. The Feast of Trumpets, as you probably know, is the day that kings were traditionally crowned. It's the coronation day. Okay, so the star, the convergence, Jupiter, Venus, appeared in August as the 2-minute warning, and then on the Feast of Trumpets, the king arrived. No, I'm not saying that I'm not implying in any way I believe the rapture is on a Feast of Trumpets, but that's what happened. The 2026 parallel, it's like in 3 BC, the king arrives to the sound of the first trump, Rosh Hashanah. In 2026, the king returns for his bride at the last trump, 1 Corinthians 15:52. On summer solstice, but the timeline we built is bookended by trumpets. And then there's the breach. What happens 11 days later? Well, I checked the Jewish calendar for the aftermath of our June 21, 2026 potential departure date, and the alignment is chilling. If the harpazo happens on June 21, look what happens just 11 days later. July 2, 2026, the 17th of Tammuz. This is the fast day commemorating the breach of the walls of Jerusalem when the enemy finally broke through. Okay? So what we're looking at here on our timeline is the June 21, the restrainer, church, Holy Spirit's restraining force is removed. July 2, the walls are breached, the protection's gone, and the hungry north pours in. Okay? All right. Now here's what utterly astounds me. Joel 2:10, as it relates to 2033, the end of our timeline. Is there a blood moon 1 month before the second coming date on our timeline? May 14 of all dates, 2033. Yes. Yes, there is. All right. I am looking at a cosmic sign roughly 1 month before our May 14, 2033 second coming date. It is a total lunar eclipse, a blood moon, exactly 30 days prior. Exactly. Maybe that's a warning. April 14, 2033, total lunar eclipse, blood moon. And this date corresponds to Passover, Nisan 14-15 in 2033. Why is that significant? Well, because just as the first redemption happened on Passover, Exodus, and the crucifixion happened on Passover, this final sign in the heavens hits precisely on the Feast of Passover. The 30-day count event, April 14, 2023, blood moon. And then the target date, May 14, 2033, second coming. Exactly 1 month. But that's not all. We have a dark sun. It gets even more intense because 2 weeks before that blood moon, there is a total solar eclipse, March 30, 2033. Okay, the sun turns dark. If you're familiar with Joel 2:31, it reads, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. Now, is that a coincidence? Well, you could say it is. I don't believe it is. It seems that our timeline now has a fully formed astronomical countdown. March 30 of 2033, sun turns dark. April 14, 2033, moon turns to blood on Passover. And May 14, the king arrives 30 days later. It seems that we have Joel 2:31 stamped on the calendar here for spring of 2033. Now, based on the astronomical path data, the locations of these two eclipses align with the geopolitical north versus south with chilling precision. Okay, here's where the darkness falls in the spring of 2033. The dark sun, March 30, 2033, total solar eclipse. The shadow of the moon makes landfall in eastern Russia, Siberia. It crosses the Bering Strait and it sweeps directly over Alaska. The sun is darkened specifically over the king of the north, Turkey and Russia, and the United States. It literally bridges the gap between the two superpowers involved in the Ezekiel conflict. And in biblical typology, the sun often represents the Gentile nations. Here, the light of the Gentiles, Western, Northern powers, is extinguished just weeks before the arrival. And then the blood moon, April 14, 2033, total lunar eclipse on Passover, fully visible over Israel. Jerusalem, as well as Europe, Africa, Asia. Unlike solar eclipses, which have a narrow path, this blood moon will hang over the entire Middle East. Jerusalem will see the moon turn red on the night of Passover, the exact anniversary of the deliverance from Egypt. Look at the typology. The moon often represents Israel, which reflects the light of the sun, God, and follows a lunar calendar. A blood moon over Jerusalem signifies a warning or a major shift for the Jewish people. So the sun shall be turned into darkness over Russia and America. That's the nations, the Gentile nations. And the moon into blood over Israel, Jerusalem. And this before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. 30 days before May 14, a very significant date as far as the second coming date on our timeline. If you haven't watched the 4 convergences of May 14, go back into our playlist in this series and watch that. A lot of this stuff is not going to make sense unless you followed it, but I'm trying my best to present it as simply as I can. There are other astronomical events in the spring that act as early warnings before this major June conjunction. If June is the wedding, well, then here's the invitations to the wedding. Okay, the blood moon, March 3, just right around the corner. All right, that's a detail that fits this Iran-Persian narrative perfectly. It's almost unnerving. A total lunar eclipse occurs on March 3, 2026. That corresponds exactly to the Feast of Purim. Purim celebrates the deliverance of the Jews from a plot of annihilation by Haman in Persia, Iran. Imagine that. So in our timeline, the Iranian regime has just fallen. It's in chaos. I've got a lot of info on that. I'll have to save that for another time. But we have a blood moon occurring exactly on the festival of deliverance from Persia. That serves as a cosmic marker that the spirit of Haman, the anti-Semitism and destruction, is rising, but God is preparing a rescue, Esther, the church. Now, we have the king in the bride's house, January 10. This is significant right at the start of the year. Jupiter reached opposition, its brightest and closest point to Earth for the year. It's parked directly in the constellation Gemini. So the king planet, Jupiter, shines its brightest while sitting in the bridegroom constellation Gemini. And in June of this year, Venus joins him there for the wedding sign. So first the king takes his place, January, then the bride joins him in June. Okay? And there's the Pleiades meeting April 19. There's one more subtle sign in April. That is a close conjunction of the moon, Venus, and Pleiades. All right. Many of you know Pleiades, the meaning is the 7 stars, often associated in Revelation with the 7 churches, Revelation 1:20. Okay, so you have the moon, call that Israel, Venus, the bright morning star, and the Pleiades, the churches clustering together just weeks before the final sequence begins. I believe very much we are in a pre-trib rapture countdown, because I'm looking at a distinct three-step sequence leading to the June date. Okay, the January 10, the King, Jupiter, enters the wedding chamber, Gemini. March 3, Purim, the warning of destruction, rescue, blood moon. And then June 9, the Star of Bethlehem returns. Call it the echo, I guess you could. Echo of the Star of Bethlehem. It returns, okay, with the Jupiter-Venus conjunction. If you see the screen that I hope they put on the screen, M45 is the catalog designation for the Pleiades star cluster. It's also known as the Seven Sisters. In astronomical terms, it is an open star cluster located in the constellation Taurus. And the fact that it's in Taurus, the bull, representing judgment, the judge coming, well, that adds another layer to this, okay? The bull, the judge rushing forward, okay? Pleiades, the seven stars, churches riding on the shoulder of the bull, safe from the judgment that the bull is delivering. So when the moon and Venus meet, Pleiades, on April 19, they're meeting in the constellation that signifies the judge is coming, but the congregation is safe on his shoulder. So we're looking around us in 360 degrees. We're looking up above us. Okay, but here's something that perhaps you can take and build on, meditate on, pray about, and then there's a few other things I want to talk about here in this video. Now, based on the historical data for the inauguration of Trump, January 2021, 2025, here's the direct comparison to where we stand today in January. I think it confirms that the squeeze is not just a theory, it's a mathematical fact. Okay, think of it like Trump's scorecard. You know, year one, Inauguration Day, January 2021, when he took office almost a year ago, the market was still pricing in geopolitical risk and supply constraints. I did a video here just recently about how the oil connection, we're looking at an oil connection here. The oil traded at $77 a barrel. I'm rounding this off. Okay, crude oil was $80 a barrel. The current status as of today, this video, after almost 12 months of the drill baby drill policy flooding the market to weaponize energy, the price has collapsed. Today, we're looking at $59 a barrel, or crude oil $63 a barrel. So you're looking at a 22 to 25% drop in global oil prices in exactly 1 year. Okay? I think this is part of the peace plan, peace part of the narrative. Gas is cheap, inflation's down, the economy's booming. And for Iran and Russia, this is the hook, as I explained in my previous video. They've lost roughly $17 a barrel in revenue. And for a country like Iran, which relies on black market oil sales to fund its proxies, this is catastrophic. They are bleeding out. So the drop from $76 to $59, I think, is the specific mechanic that forcing them to move from a This is why we're seeing what appears to be, in my opinion, I'm a veteran of the Cold War as well, so it's a move from the Cold War to a hot war, okay, in the next 6 months. They simply can't survive another year of this trend, okay? All right. Now, I'd like for you to look at this and take it very seriously. This is a mathematical, astronomical masterpiece, in my opinion. I've verified the dates, astronomical events, and calendar alignments. The precision here is not approximate. It is exact. Okay? Exact. Okay. Now, we have, and I've spoken often about how the Lord seems to be showing us bookends. Okay, we have the May 14 bookends, what I call the Alpha and the Omega lock. May 14, 80 33 Ascension. Okay, April 3, 80 33. That's standard scholarly dating. I know many of you think it's 32 or whatever, but this is standard scholarly dating. The resurrection being April 5, the ascension 40 days, lands exactly on May 14, 80 33. Okay, May 14, 1948, Israel's reborn. That's a historical fact. Okay, May 14, 2033, Second Advent. That's verified logic. Okay, this is exactly 2,000 Gregorian years. That aligns with Hosea 6:2. After 2 days, he'll revive us from the ascension. Jesus ascended on May 14. He returns on May 14. That's my contention. You do not have to agree. That's the beauty of all this. You don't have to agree with anything I say. If I said I was a white person, you don't have to agree. You can think I'm black. I don't know. I don't care. So the man of sevens, born 1946, serves as the bridge between the 48 rebirth and the 2033 return. Okay, June 14, 2026, Trump, okay, becomes 80 because he was born June 14, 1946. And June 21, 2026, the departure date on our timeline, the solstice, that's verified. This is exactly 7 days after his 80th birthday. And then July 2, 2026, the breach, as I've mentioned, okay, July 2, 2026 is indeed 17 Tammuz. This is the fast of Tammuz, and tradition holds that this is the exact day Moses broke the tablets, due to the golden calf and the day that the walls of Jerusalem were breached by the Romans in AD 70. Okay, so the gap from June 21 to July 2 is 10 days, and that fits the tribulation 10 days of prison before the walls fall. Read Revelation 2:10, okay? Just read Revelation 2:10. The devil puts us in them, not us, them in prison. The devil, not the Antichrist. The devil puts them in prison. That's their conscience, okay? They have to decide who to follow at that point, just like it was with the golden calf incident. It's really amazing if you look at it. So the midpoint, 1260 days, December 2, abomination of desolation, June 21, our departure date, plus 1260s, December 2. This places the abomination of desolation exactly at the 3.5-year mark of the 7-year cycle ending in 2033. And then, as I said, the 2033 celestial finale, March 30 of that year, solar eclipse, okay, visible in Russia, Magog, and Alaska. The sun turns to darkness. And then April 14, 2033, the lunar eclipse, total lunar eclipse, blood moon, visible over Europe, Africa, Asia, and Israel. Okay, triggering, I believe, the Joel 2:31 sequence. The sun shall be turned into darkness, the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. These eclipses occur exactly 45 and 30 days before the May 14, 2033 return date. The astronomical sky literally enacts the verse immediately preceding the arrival. That's how I see it. Okay? The timeline that we have, folks, is flawless. Will God use it? I have no idea. I hope he does. I truly do. That's our blessed hope. But this timeline connects the ascension AD 33 to the return AD 2033, using the state of Israel and the man of sevens as the central anchors. Why? Why these two? Because one's Gentile, one's Israel. So the probability of Trump's 80th birthday, the summer solstice, and the 17th of Tammuz, the golden calf breach aligning in a single 20-day window is astronomically impossible in my thinking. Okay, because we're never going to pass through these dates again, ever. It's starting to sound less like a timeline or a theory and more like a schedule. So this is what's interesting to me about this. I hope you find this very enlightening. What happened after Aaron's sin of creating the golden calf? Well, a bunch of stuff that happens to shadow, I don't know if you've caught this or not, the tribulation period. Think of it like the breach, okay? The golden calf. That was not the end of the story. It was the trigger for the great sifting. July 2, 2026, 17th of Tammuz, corresponds to the golden calf incident. It's a fast day where they remember Aaron's sin of creating the golden calf. And the period immediately following that mirrors exactly what happened in the camp of Israel, a separation of the faithful from the unfaithful. Are you with me on this? So here is the biblical sequence of that period of testing and how it overlays our timeline. The call to choose sides, the separation. Immediately after, look, if you've watched Charlton Heston's movie, okay, I mean, the old movie, that's what it reminds me of. Immediately after seeing the calf, Moses stood at the entrance of the camp and issued the ultimate ultimatum. Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. Exodus 32:26. This was the moment of decision. There was no neutral ground. You either stood with the idol, the calf, or you stood with Charlton Heston. Okay, that was a bad joke, all right? You stood with Moses, the intercessor. What was the result? Well, the sons of Levi gathered to Moses. They separated themselves from that idolatry. In our 2026 scenario, after the breach, July 2, the world is forced to choose. The system, the beast, the calf, will be established. And the test is who refuses to bow. It's plain to me. It's like it lights up in neon on the page when you read it. You have the removal of the rebels, the judgment. Those who refused to separate from the calf were judged. Okay? About 3,000 men fell, or people fell on that day. Exodus 32:28. Okay? Now we have the sword. Hello. I'm going to say Islam. The sword went through the camp. It was a purge of those who had fully given themselves over to the work of their hands. And then there was a 40-day intercession. Remember the second wait? This is the most critical part of the testing. After the calf, Moses went back up the mountain for another 40 days and 40 nights to plead for the people and receive the second set of tablets. That's Deuteronomy chapter 9, verses 18 and 25. So the people were left alone again. They'd failed the first wait, which caused the calf. And now they had to endure a second wait while Moses was gone. Now, when you overlay that on our timeline, this aligns with the time of trouble, or the first half of the tribulation. The true church, the restrainers, effectively gone or hidden, and the people are tested to see if they can maintain faith without the visible presence of the intercessor. You getting this? And then what happened? Oh my gosh, what happened? The plague. The Lord plagued the people. Why? Because they made the calf. Exodus 32:35. Even after the sword, a plague was sent. The sin of the golden calf left a mark of sickness on the camp that had to be purged over time. Don't you find that amazing? I do. I had to run all through that with Sue just to get her opinion on that. Now, the sin of the golden calf, Tammuz 17, didn't result in immediate annihilation of the whole nation. It resulted in a severe testing, a sifting process. The Levites, the remnant, were identified. The rebels were purged. The camp was plagued and tested by Moses' absence. If July 2, 2026 is the breach, which I believe it would be on this timeline, then the time that follows is the era of the Levite choice. Who is on the Lord's side? And the image of Moses at the gate is powerful because it represents the ultimate binary moment. You know, the chaos, the golden calf, the dancing, the noise, the partying, the getting drunk, and whatever else, okay? You probably know what all. Of the world that had lost its way. And then there's order. Moses standing at the gate, offering a clear, hard line. And in our timeline, this separation at the gate isn't just ancient history, folks. It seems to be, in my opinion, the blueprint for July 2026. I could be wrong. Been wrong before. But these used to be all isolated events that we see now that's all converging. The modern parallel here, the reason this fits so perfectly into our sequence, you know, ascension, man of sevens, breach, testing, is that the world will face the same moment. Okay? Just as the Israelites were celebrating the calf because Moses delayed to come down, the world in 2026, they may very well be celebrating their new freedom or the arrival of aliens, UAP, UFO, all that crap, because the true king seems to have delayed. The breach being the walls fall, July 2, 17th day of Tammuz. This is when the illusion shatters. The call then rings out. The question will ring out again: who is on the Lord's side? It's the moment where the gray area evaporates. You cannot be kind of on the Lord's side when the camp's burning. And it also reinforces the role of the man of sevens. He is not Moses. He's likely closer to Aaron, in my opinion, and at least in this specific metaphor. The one who facilitates the golden calf, the system, the deal, the art of the deal, because the people demanded it, or perhaps he's the Jehu figure who drives furiously. But the ultimate call comes from God, comes from the divine. The hook in the jaw that I tried to explain in the last video, economic war leads to the breach, the military war, which leads to the test, the spiritual war. That's how it appears to me. And because it seems to be a seamless progression from geopolitics to theology. Okay. Now, I have checked the calendar. and the schedule is precise. July 2, 2026 is in fact the 17th of Tammuz. If a breach, an invasion, attack were to occur on this specific day, it would not just be a military crisis for Israel. It would be a theological shockwave. Every rabbi, every scholar, every observant Jew, particularly Messianic Jews, would immediately recognize the terrifying pattern. Remember when you watch, I don't know if you watched the movie, I remember watching Charleston Heston coming down, and he broke the second tablets the day that the broken tablets were broke. You know, he threw them and they broke, and 5 things befell the Jewish people on that date. The first was the tablets were broken. This occurred because Moses came down from Sinai. He saw the golden calf. He smashed the commandments. Okay, if the breach happens on this day, it signals to the nation that the protection's been lifted due to idolatry or a golden calf. Okay? And this is the day the walls were breached. The third calamity listed for this day is the walls were breached. This marks the day that the Roman legions breached the walls of Jerusalem in AD 70, leading to the destruction of the Second Temple. And this was 3 weeks later. Tisha B'Av. If the defenses of Israel fail or the borders are overrun on July 2, 2026, folks, it is a literal reenactment of the 17th of Tammuz, and it signifies the collapse of physical security. And what happens? Well, now we see now we've got an idol in the sanctuary. The fifth calamity listed as an idol placed in the sanctuary. And this aligns with the abomination of desolation. Okay? The compromise that allows the enemy in. You know, the 3 weeks of sorrow. The 17th of Tammuz is a very important date. It marks the beginning of the 3 weeks, a period of intense mourning that leads up to the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av. Scripture calls this period the dire straits. No, that's not the musical group. Steve, stop with the stupid jokes. If the invasion begins on July 2, the nation enters the time of Jacob's trouble exactly during the season designated for mourning the destruction of the temple. And folks, they ought to recognize it. I think many will. If the walls fall on the anniversary of the walls falling, and the covenant's broken on the anniversary of the tablets breaking, it's impossible to call it a coincidence. It forces the realization that this is not just bad luck, it's divine judgment. It forces them to look back at the golden calf that they trusted in, which was what? The U.S., the peace deal, their own military, and realize that it has failed them. It is the ultimate I told you so from history. It forces them to look back at what? The golden calf that their ancestor Aaron made and many Jews trusted in. Don't look at Israel today as trusting in God. Israel is set aside in unbelief. It is trusting in U.S. aid and its own military and God knows what all. It's technology and everything else. It's wealth. The parallel, folks, is haunting because it strikes at the very heart of national psychology. It is the root cause of the breach. It wasn't just a military failure, it was a spiritual displacement. When I say that they will likely look back at the golden calf, I'm describing the shattering of a security idol. The Aaron dynamic, the role of Aaron in the golden calf incident in Exodus 32 is often overlooked, but it is, I think, critical to our 2026 timeline. Aaron was not an atheist, okay? He was the high priest. He built the calf because he was pressured by the people's fear. They said, Moses is gone. He's delayed. Make us a God we can see. And Aaron tried to manage the chaos. He asked for their gold, their wealth. He gave them a tangible system, the calf, to make them feel safe. He even built an altar, and he proclaimed, tomorrow is a feast of the Lord. He actually, think about that. He tried to blend the worship of Yahweh with the security of the idol. And what is the modern parallel? This perfectly mirrors the current Israeli reliance on itself, first and foremost. The U.S. aid, the man of sevens, U.S. power, military power, the art of the deal. It's like, we trust in God, but we rely on the F-35s. We trust in the covenant, but our safety comes from the treaty. And the realization on Tammuz 17, when the walls fall on July 2, 2026, according to our timeline, the realization won't just be, well, we're under attack. It'll be the calf has failed. It is impossible, folks, for me to see these two events, the historical and the present, separate and unrelated to one another. The golden calf did not protect them. It actually invited the judgments. What it did, it was the reason the tablets were smashed. What's the modern lesson? Well, the deal of the century, the normalization, the U.S. security guarantee, that entire diplomatic golden calf, it didn't stop the hooks. In fact, relying on it, letting their guard down because of peace and safety is likely what allows the breach. They'll look back in Zechariah 12:10, which says, they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as an only begotten son. But before they get to that ultimate realization at the second coming in 2033, there is this immediate realization in 2026. We trusted in the wrong Savior. We trusted in the fisherman, the one who cast the hooks in the jaws, trusted in his protection, Aaron's calf, thinking that it was the same as God's protection. But the breach on the 17th day of Tammuz destroys that illusion. It forces them to realize that no man-made system, no matter how shiny or powerful, can hold back the judgment. It's the necessary heartbreak that breaks their reliance on the nations and forces them to turn back to their God and my God. So, I think we just reinforced the entire timeline. And what is striking is that we didn't just reinforce it with one type of data. We reinforced it with three distinct strands that rarely converge so perfectly. "700 days. Trump's born 700 days before the state of Israel is reborn. The 80 years birth of Trump to 2026. It lands exactly 7 days before the solstice. And this is the guy that the sevens dog his heels. The 2,000 years, ascension to return, I think we may have identified how the war starts, not with a random gunshot, but with an economic siege, the hook. As I'm speaking, our president, Trump here, the fisherman, as I've come to call him, he's actively starving Russia, Iran right now. So that's the mechanism is live. Okay? And then we're even targeting their shadow fleet, their ghost fleet, their dark fleet, okay? That's where they're trying to run through sanctions. And folks, this all parallels the golden calf, explaining why the protections lifted. The people trusted Aaron, the fisherman, more than the divine. In a nutshell, we don't just have a timeline of dates. We seem to have a narrative of cause and effect. You know, the cause being that the world, Israel, trusts the deal, the golden calf. The fisherman sets the economic hooks, forcing the enemy to bite. And then the breach occurs on the anniversary of, on our timeline, the broken tablets, shattering the false security. It is a complete self-reinforcing structure. Okay, and then that 10 days, June 21, July 1, that to me is the most psychologically intense period in human history. It is the space between two worlds. It's not just a gap, it's a pressure chamber. It's a pressure chamber. They will have to decide, according to one of the letters in the churches, Smyrna, I believe, the Lord shall cast you into prison for 10 days, or the devil will cast you in prison for 10 days. It's interesting. The devil shall cast you in prison. That's a metaphor. Okay? In Jewish tradition, the days of awe are the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah, as you know or may know, and Yom Kippur, a time of repentance before the gates close. And I see this 10-day period in 2026 as the inverted reflection of that. The age of grace has just closed at the rapture. The gate of hell is about to open, the breach. Okay? You know, millions vanish. The restrainers removed. Think of the psychology of that. Just absolute panic. The world's trying to process the impossible. You know, this is probably where the alien UAP narrative is deployed instantly. Many of you, I know, believe that. Well, those folks, they've been taken. You know, aliens snatched us away. And then you have, you know, the disciples gazing up into heaven, you know, and the angel, you know, why do you stand here looking into the sky? I think that period, folks, is a prison of the mind. The panic settles into a terrified, surreal new normal. You know, while whoever's president here is likely declaring martial law or emergency powers to maintain order, I think this is the tribulation of the 10 days in Revelation 2:10. The left behind, the tares. No church age member will be left behind. Guarantee you that. Okay? These are the tares, the unready wheat, perhaps in the valley of decision. Do they believe the lie, or do they realize the truth and repent? And God is silent. God is silent during that period. The Holy Spirit's restraining influence is gone. There's a vacuum. Now, 1 year since the discovery of the object 3I Atlas in 2025. Wow. Okay. I'll put this slide. I hope they put this slide back up on the screen here. That's amazing. We have more bookends here. And then just look at what happens July 4, 2026. Well, U.S. Independence Day. This is the Belshazzar's feast moment of the timeline. The significance is staggering. July 4, 2026. It's not just another Independence Day. It's the semi-quincentennial, the exact 250th anniversary of the United States, 1776 to 2026. I don't have any information to give you about whether Trump will be raptured or not. I'm just telling you. These are the dates. Okay? Trump's probably been planning this, a big party for this Make America Great Again vision. It's meant to be the biggest celebration of American power, wealth, and liberty in all of U.S. history. But look at where it falls on the divine schedule that we just constructed here. July 4, July 2, 17th day of Tammuz, the breach, tablets are broken, protection lifts. July 4, 250th birthday party. Look at the ultimate irony, okay? The feast during the fall, this mirrors Daniel 5, Belshazzar's feast with precision, terrifying precision. The Babylonians were celebrating their greatness and invincibility while the Medes and Persians were diverting the river to breach the city gates. The U.S. in 2026 will be attempting to celebrate its 250th year of glory just 48 hours after the spiritual and military breaches occurred. That's how it would come out on the timeline. Okay, there was a historian, Sir John Glubb, who wrote a famous essay, The Fate of Empires, where he analyzed that the average lifespan of the world's greatest superpowers is roughly 250 years. Assyria, 247. British Empire, 250. And the United States, 250 in this year. Okay? That's a little discomforting, I know. It is for me as a patriot, a veteran, but I'm a Christian first and foremost. And I have to fit that, see where that fits into the timeline. Okay? The golden calf parallel continues on this too. Remember what Aaron said in Exodus 32:5 after building the calf? He said, tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. Remember that? He tried to turn the idolatry into a national holiday. On July 4, the world will likely be trying to force a celebration to prove that everything is fine, to drown out the panic of the rapture and the news of the breach. They'll be celebrating independence. Independence. Man without God. At the exact moment that they have become enslaved to the beast system. It's the final tragic toast before the lights go out. The calf, folks, is haunting. Okay, why? Because both Israel and the U.S. within 48 hours, that calf is haunting both the U.S. and Israel within 48 hours of each other. It is a tale of two calves. Okay, the spiritual resonance that links these two nations at the hip. In that 48-hour window, July 2 to 4 of 2026, both chosen nations, the Old Covenant people and the New World, are confronted with the idols that they built to replace God. It is haunting because the script is identical to Exodus 32. It's just played out on two different stages. We're all familiar with Israel's calf. Most of us, I think, some of us kind of got that back in vacation Bible school when we were 5 or 10 or, okay. The sin of Israel trusting in the land, the state, rather than the giver. Trusting Aaron, the deal maker, to keep them safe while Moses is gone. The breach, 17th day of Tammuz, physical walls fall, the illusion that, that we can protect ourselves is shattered, which I see that as the breaking of the tablets. And then America's calf, the idol of liberty and wealth. Oh my gosh. Just look. What is our altar, really? It's the Constitution, the economy, the 250 years of empire, the military strength. What is our sin? Independence from God. The very word independence implies freedom from dependence on God. It is a celebration of human will and national glory. Just like Aaron said, tomorrow is a feast of the Lord. While pointing at the calf, America will hold its biggest party ever, semi-quincentennial, celebrating its own greatness, while the smoke from the breach is already in the air. 48-hour collision. The tragedies in the timing. Now, it is not lost on me that the literal symbol of American financial power, the power to, the power that the fishermen used to set the hooks, is what? The charging bull of Wall Street. A golden bronze calf. In those 48 hours, the bull market of Western civilization could effectively end. The bear, Magog, has torn the fence down. This brings us to the edge of the cliff. And I got to stop right here and just say I love you all. I truly do. I hope that some of this has helped you in your studies. You other watchmen, you build on this. Disregard it. Build on take what you feel that is helpful. I hope you found it encouraging. I hope you found it hopeful. I hope that you realize just how much that we love you. I love you all. I truly do. Until next time, rest in Him.